Welcome to the good ride where we can pull a triple cork as long as it's 3 small bottles. And this is the review of the Lib Lost Mayhem Rocket. It is a board we've rode in numerous conditions. Everything from pretty hard early season crappy snow, thick, soft, wet, super spring, almost summer snow. We've ridden in a little bit of powder. You've ridden in a lot of powder, right?
Yep.
And a little bit of everything in between. We rode this with Union Atlas, Union Strata, and our Adidas Tactical ADVs, size 11 and size 9.
I rode with Cartel.
Yeah. Oh, okay, Cartel.
Yeah. This one I've only ridden with Cartels. Yeah.
Another good ride favorite. And to give you a short summary, this is an evolution of the old Lost Rocket that was horsepower technology, HP technology. This is original power construction. It's a little heavier, it's a little more damp, but you know, it's got a different personality than the old one. Similar specs, similar sizing, but it has a more centered on-board ride than you would think for its shape. But it's a fun board to carve. It's pretty decent in powder, not amazing, and just has kind of a great one-board quiver for those of you who favor a more directional style of riding. And getting into the sizing, the 52.5 might be more my thing than the 57.5. I found it a little tough to turn in super tight spots, but it was manageable for my size 9s, and if you want a wider, fatter board with a little more stability, a little more speed, this 57.5 could work. But that's your board, right? The 57.
Yeah, for this board, and I've owned this in the previous construction that James was talking about, but the 57.5 for my specs is perfect. I'm right in the middle of the weight range of this board, and for my shoe size, this works great.
Yeah, for his 11s. CAMBER, on snow feel. This board, it's pretty cool. Check the On the Table review. It's got camber between the bindings and then rising up to a little bit of early rise in the tip and tail, which is really surprising for C3, and that's pretty cool. So it doesn't feel as locked in and aggressive as you would think, but it's still pretty locked in. I felt like there's a lot of board here, and
there is, yeah.
But it's not that easy to skid turns either, which was kind of surprising with all that early rise. I think maybe it's just for me, it's such a wide profile that it was just hard to kind of skid out, but it was way more forgiving than it would be if it was full camber or compared to other full camber rides.
You know, it was kind of, for me, the stance thing, which we'll touch on later, was an issue, which may have, if I could get my stance exactly the right width, may have helped a little, because that's what I'm used to. But
well, there's no better place to talk about that than now. And I agree. The stance, that's one thing that was kind of like a, you know, your turn-ons and turn-offs and your me harmony profile.
Yeah.
If you really like to free your taint and really like a wide stance, then this is good. Because I mean, if you want to set it all the way back, which we both love to do, I think it's like 23.5 inches. That's really wide. That's really wide, especially this day and age. So if you like a narrower stance, this might be a deal breaker for you, because you won't be able to utilize all the inserts here. And then the flex. You want to do the honors?
Yeah, sure. So
yeah,
I was gonna say, like,
do it side.
Kind of a you know, kind of a medium to medium stiff. What do you think, James?
I would agree. Yeah. It could butter off the tail okay. It took a little bit of work for me. It's early season though. But also the horsepower construction versus original power construction, I feel this feels a little more damp. Some might call it a little more dead, but it's still a Mervin board. It still has a lot of pop. It's really, you can really spring on an ollie. It's a little difficult to butter, but it's just got a more damp feel.
I agree. More so with the deadness sort of feel, because I owned the HP construction one, and I was a huge fan of that board. Again, I couldn't get my stance exactly right, but I had a lot of fun on that board, and So when riding this one, for me, I was let down a little bit in the with that having that snappy sort of more lively feel you get with the HP construction.
And see, I'm the opposite of you because I liked the HP, how light and poppy it was, but I didn't like how chattery it was. And I felt like, okay, now this feels like it's matching my 185 pounds better than, where the HP was matching your 165 pounds. And you like that. You're willing to give up some dampness and, tolerate a little more chatter for that.
But with that said, since it's OP construction, I think you save between $100 and $150 on this model opposed to the past seasons.
Yeah. And that's another good thing. And also some people have complained that horsepower breaks down faster.
Right.
It softens up quicker. And this probably won't. But going into speed, that's what I loved about this. It's super damp. It's super powerful. The base doesn't quite have amazing glide, but it was good. Kind of,
I thought it was good.
Yeah, it's an upper, but not the best of the best.
Sweet all black base with this translucent wood here, which it looks great.
But yeah, it wasn't the best of the best, but it really, I felt even when it was like the wax was coming off, it didn't have a low.
Right.
But it was definitely on the medium high side. Yeah. Didn't have a super high, but it definitely was up there and had really good glide, especially in those flat areas coming back to the chair. It kept its speed well enough. And then uneven terrain, I felt a little bit like this is not the board I ever want to be in moguls with. Maybe the 52.5 would be a whole, or 53.5, whatever it is. That'd be a whole different story. That'd be a whole new...
Right.
That'd be a time. This just was not doing it for me there. But powering over uneven terrain, so much better than the old HP model.
Right. You prefer this one, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I felt with uneven terrain, I didn't mind this, but we're a different shoe size, so that has a lot to do with maneuverability and stuff. You get caught in a mogul field or take a wrong turn or whatever the case may be. But yeah, you're right as far as this one being more damp and stable at speed. It was great with that.
I thought the edge hold was pretty good. It's not, you can see there's just there's almost no disruption, if any, in the side cut. So it holds a good edge, kind of hard snows, kind of where you want to cut it, put it away after that. It's not like your traditional magnet traction boards with a whole bunch going on, but it grips pretty well. And then carving, I was surprised because I thought this would not carve as well because of all that rocker. I thought that, that lessened C3, but for some reason it still had a lot of spring, a lot of power out of the turn, and it's really easy to lay over. It's a really good carver. It's not the best I've ever tried, and I think I was riding some Kuro boards with this at the same time, and I was getting a little more spring, a little more enjoyment out of the turn, but it's way better. It's definitely on the upper end, but I will say, though, that I played around with stance positions, stance angles. I wrote it slightly duck, like 3:18. Then I wrote it +3, 21. And then I even wrote it like +6, 27, and played around with all kinds of stances. And I was surprised that it just worked fine with all of them. Likes a little more back foot weight, but as you're finishing that turn, you want to, with this taper, but not as much as I thought it would need.
Right.
I was impressed. What about you?
No, I agree. I liked carving this board a lot, actually. The only problem was when I first got this, I didn't do any measurements. I just set it all the way back with the cartel bindings, and I did a +3 on the rear and I think a +21 on the front. And it was really awkward because it was like a 22.5 or 23 width, maybe even more, maybe 23.5 that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
But doing a full directional stance that wide didn't work out for me. I've got a pretty narrow frame, and that didn't work. So I had to sort of change things up and then
too much
move this up, and then I wanted it to be all the way back. because that's sort of how I like to ride. Some other of my favorites, like the Karoo shapes and stuff, I like to set those all the way back. So it was a little awkward adjusting it and trying to figure it out, but once I did, it was okay carver. I thought it was a fun board.
Yeah, and same thing for me with powder. I was surprised. I thought it would carve less and float better. It carved better and floated less. Mm-hmm. Interesting. But I was expecting a lot more float with this. It rides more centered. Check the on the table review. It's not very set back on board. It's pretty far set back on side cut, but not on board. So there's still a lot of tail there. And I was doing like all kinds of weird tricks. Like I was mounting a Union Atlas like a mini disc and sliding it all the way down here. And then, so I could try to get further back here so I could get further back on board, which probably you shouldn't do, but I had to try it just to see like, okay, how can I get the most float possible? And I was kind of unimpressed for how directional and floaty it looks. It wasn't as floaty as it looked, and that kind of bummed me out.
Yeah, based on the outline, you would. And it's cool, this nose. I don't know if you can see it here. It's got that like kick. That little kick in the nose, kind of like how Mayhem does on a lot of his shortboards, his surfboards. So I guess that's where the design came from. So I guess there is that, can kind of help with the reassurance, keep your nose from going under as bad as it would if it was more of a streamlined profile. But yeah, I agree with James on the float on this. Not as good as I thought it would be based on the outline of the board.
Yeah, and riding groomers, I could ride this switch a little bit, and really wouldn't want to take it in the park. And all in all, it's a pretty good board. I think it's a great one-board quiver for somebody looking for a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But it didn't really shine in powder the way I'd hoped.
I agree.